Thank you.
Come on in, guys. More the merrier. Thank you all so much for coming tonight. It means a lot to me. I know it means a great deal to the gentleman standing behind me. I want to tell you just a little bit about how this all came out. First of all, my name is Paul Polycarp. I'm the publisher of the Nashville Arts Magazine. If you haven't seen it, I hope you all pick it up. It's a wonderful addition to the art scene here. Somewhere Sarah is here, who's our editor. Sarah, squeal or do something. Anyway,
she's getting you water.
She's getting water. Well, she's here. She's our editor. We started the magazine 6 years ago, and with a huge emphasis on photography. I am a photography lover. I love photography. I think it is the new art form as we sort of plow straight ahead into the digital age. I think in 50 or 60 years people will look at photography as we now look at the old masters and go, wow, look at this, look at what this gentleman did or this lady did with a camera. So I love photography, I make no bones about it, I love all of the arts, but photography has a big, big place in my heart. Another thing that has a big, big place in my heart is the gentleman standing over there with the hat, and that is Tony Scarlatti, who was the first photographer that we ever got on at the Nashville Arts Magazine, and really one of the reasons why the magazine looks so good, and it does. It looks beautiful every month. Tony set the level, and every photographer that came after him had to hit that level or above it, or they were out. So thank you for Tony. The other thing I want to thank Tony for is this. He really is as passionate about photography as I am, and he will call me and say, man, I just met this photographer, and you've got to feature them in the magazine. I said, great, great, great. Who is it? He said, I met this guy, and I saw a photograph over at Darryl Scott's house. This is Darryl Scott right here. I saw this photograph at Darryl Scott's house, and then I met him at this party, and then you just got to see it. And this is how he talks. He just can't get the words out quick enough when he's that excited about the photography. So I said, I want to see it. So I did see it, and of course, I fell in love with it. And I'm going to read you a little bit, before I introduce it, I'm going to read a little bit out of his book about how this whole thing happened. This is Bob's book. It's called The Wandering Hindu, which I love already. And it says, I received a voicemail at my office from someone named Paul, who spoke with a marked British accent. Paul identified himself as the editor of the Nashville Arts Magazine. He wondered if I would mind meeting him in order to discuss a 6- or 7-page article that he would like to do on my work. Now let me see. Would I mind? My fingers broke the speed of light, dialing his number, and we set up a time for him and one of his writers to come to my office and interview me. Paul Polycarp was remarkably friendly. I fooled him, and because the phone conversation went really well, I used the opportunity to manifest some of my New York chutzpah, good Yiddish, for a combination of gall and balls. And that's what he wrote. To let him know that the article that I'd love for him to write would be entitled The Shrink Who Takes Pictures. So why not try to get some free advertising for my therapy practice? Paul told me he thought that was a great idea and that he was thinking something closer. Then Paul said, I think it would be a good idea for us to time the article to coincide with your next show. When I finally stopped laughing, I told Paul that I'd love to time the article with my first show. Paul seemed quite surprised that I had never had an exhibition of my work. Well, here it is, Bob. It's all up here, mate. Be careful what you wish for or what you pray for. This is it. As you know, Bob,
Before you start,
yes,
I just want to let you know how much I very much appreciate your taking the schlep here to be here tonight.
Oh, no, listen.
It means a lot to me.
It's my pleasure to be here. You can't
Not just you.
For the world. All of it. Well, listen, I thought 3 people were going to show up and I was going to be one of them, but this is fantastic. I think we've got Danny Flowers in the house. Where's Danny?
We do.
Danny's here some, of course.
Right over there.
Fantastic. If you don't know who Danny is, look him up, and then you go, oh, I was in the same room with him. Oh, my goodness. Oh, you know, so, and Darryl Scott, too. I mean, just fantastic. Bob, let's start about the way. No, something else I want to do before the night is over. I want you all to think about which of these paintings speaks to you the loudest. Because I might just call upon you and say, why do you like it? Not to put you on the spot, but just to have a nice conversation. I can tell you which one hits me the most, and I will tell you that later, and the one that made me turn the corner and go, I absolutely adore what this man does. Bob, let's talk about the work. Come over here. A little bit. You could have gone anywhere, and I know you've been to, name some of the places you've been on photography jaunts. Vietnam.
Vietnam, Laos, Sri Lanka,
South Africa.
India, South Africa, Swaziland, Afghanistan. In this room, Cambodia, Swaziland.
In Denver.
And Denver.
And you did go to Denver. One of these, I think, was Denver.
That's one of the more dangerous places I went.
It's because the air is thin in Denver. So you go. Listen, you could have gone anywhere in the world. Now, I know a lot of these places where these pictures are taken, certainly up there, Afghanistan, very sort of, not, when I say unhospitable, I mean very difficult climates to be in, difficult working environments, difficult with the heat. What drew you to these far-off places looking for this particular little boy over here?
We don't have that much time.
Well, we're going to make time. Just
okay.
Go ahead.
My childhood experience did not involve any type of religious experience. And for reasons unknown to me, from a very early age, I was on some kind of spiritual quest. And I didn't know I was, but I would be 8 years old and I would be walking into a synagogue, not understanding the words, and just sitting there on my own. My parents didn't go. By the time I finished therapy the first time, which was around 21, I knew that therapy alone was not going to do it for me, and that I was missing something. And it became clearer to me that whatever it was that I was missing would only be satisfied through some kind of direct spiritual experience. That ultimately resulted in me winding up in India and living in an ashram, and that started to take the form of what that experience was going to be. As long as I was in the neighborhood, I took a camera.
Well, but let me back up though. I mean, had you already started photography? I mean, were you already intrigued with the photographic process?
At a very early age, probably. My father had taken pictures, so he had a camera that I would start to use. Unfortunately, I did not have the kind of relationship with him where we would talk about things, so we never talked about photography. But at least I saw him taking pictures, so I started taking pictures. And what's fascinating is that the few pictures that I have from that time are all portraits. And it's like, I would have taken that shot. Oh, I did take that shot.
So you were how old? I mean, when you say at that time, you were what?
8.
8. Okay. Okay.
And so in a rare moment between my parents and myself, when I got my doctorate, they gave me a 35mm camera.
Little did they know.
Little did I know. Yeah. And it was just before I was going to India for the first time. I thought I was going away for 4 months. I came back 2.5 years later. And I would take shots. I would take 10 rolls of film and mail them back to the States, because you don't want to have your film developed in India or Afghanistan. And so for a year, I never saw any of the shots that I took. I was living in Tehran for a year, and so my parents sent me back some of the shots. And I was fascinated to see that as the trip progressed, my shots got better.
When you say got better, what is better?
Better to me at that time meant, well, at that time, the exposure was better. The composition was better. It would be, I liked what I was looking at.
So were you refining your eye? So you were looking at things differently. You're looking at them as a photographer.
Even though I didn't know it at the time. And it stayed that way. I mean, I was gone for 2.5 years. And had gone back to India and did other traveling, at least until the mid-'80s. Around the late 80s, I started taking this from a different perspective. I started to want to create more than just pictures.
I've got to ask you, but when you say I want to create more, and this is something I ask every artist that I interview or talk to or have in the magazine, are you doing it for you, or are you doing it for me? When you say I want to do more, are you doing it because you want me to go, now that's really cool? Or are you doing it so you can go, I satisfied something in me by taking this photograph? Who are you doing it for?
This is a different flavor of the first question you ever asked me. Because when he did come to my office that first time, the very first question he asked me was, and I can't do the British accent, but basically, as a photographer,
give it a shot.
As a photographer, what is it, as an artist, what is it that you're trying to communicate to your viewer at the time you take the picture? And I'm sitting there saying, this guy doesn't know who he's talking to. And it's like, okay, but let me see if I can answer his question. And I had never thought about it. And as I thought about it, it became clear to me that I had no one else in mind but myself at that moment. And the person that I was trying to satisfy was me. And I was trying to capture a moment that had meaning for me. So that's my answer.
Yeah, which is interesting, because some photographers, I mean, Jerry Atnips is in the room, incredible, and Nick Dantana's in the room, both incredible photographers. Each has a different way of approaching things. Some photographers might say, look, I'm going to take a photograph that's going to blow your socks off. This is going to be the best thing you've ever seen. Other photographers like yourself say, no, that's not really my agenda. My agenda is, I met this man, and I saw this, and something inside of me said, I have to take that photograph. It just so happens to be a fabulous photograph at the same time. You know. Part of it is, you know, when a photographer goes out there, like say, a journalistic photographer, at some point when you point the camera at this little boy, what changes? It's like, you know, like Bob Dylan once said, when he walks into a restaurant, everything changes, because everyone goes, oh, Bob Dylan's in the restaurant. So everybody stops talking, everybody starts looking, the whole dynamic changes. Same thing happens when you point a camera at somebody. When I point a camera at you, all of a sudden you're like, there's a camera, and you change. Does that happen when you're out there? Are you conscious of doing that? That the magic that you're seeking changes the moment you put the camera on the child?
That's not a one-size-fits-all question for me. Much of the time, when I'm taking a portrait, I am seeking to capture a sense of an opening, a sense of seeing beyond just the surface of what it is that I'm looking at. And I'll wait. And so as I'm taking this shot, I'm fooling around with his father. The guy over here is his father. And he and I are fooling around. And I'm trying to get this kid to see me. And I want to see him. And so I'm waiting until there is this moment. And I have this book that I just put out, and it's called The Wandering Hindu, but when I wrote it, as the first time I wrote it, what was on the title, the working title was Connections.
So you're looking for a connection to this?
That's what this is.
At what point, Bob, look, I spent some time in Peru with Molly, we're down there as filmmakers. You know, it's so hard when you see children who are penniless, they want some food, they want some... At what point do you go, look, I will take your picture, but I cannot enter your world. I cannot change your situation. I mean, at what point do you stop being Bob Sherman, a human being, and just go, I've just got to take the shot and then I've got to go?
Well, some people would say I've never become Bob Sherman, the human being. So they would frame the question, when are you going to start becoming a human being? So let's put that aside.
That's in the future.
Actually, I sent out a dose. For those of you that don't know, I send out something called the Daily Dose. it's one of my shots and 2 quotes that goes to thousands of people all over the world. And every so often, I'll put in something that is the extra dose. And the extra dose can be anything. Well, a couple of weeks ago, the extra dose was human beings are, no, man is the missing link between the apes and human beings. So I fit somewhere in there.
If you haven't signed up for the Daily Dose, you should. I know there's several people in the room that live by it every morning, Molly being one of them.
So, India is an all-encompassing experience that for those of you that are old enough that can remember the first Star Trek, they had this holodeck, and you could go in there and it would recreate anything you wanted. Well, I call India a spiritual holodeck because things happen there that don't fit in with what we consider to be normal.
Right.
And I know that the first time I went to India, I hated it.
Because you weren't ready for it?
Oh, boy, was I not ready
You
for
weren't ready for it.
It was too much of everything.
Right.
It was too hot. It was too dirty. It was too loud. It was too smelly. They have no sense of personal space.
Gotcha.
It was just so overwhelming to me that I knew that if I killed one of them and was tried by a jury of my peers, I'd be given an award. I hated it. I couldn't wait to get out. I traveled some more, didn't go home, came back a year later, and for reasons totally unknown to me, that experience changed. I don't know why. All those things were there, but I no longer hated it. I was no longer being overwhelmed by it, being blown away by it. At that moment, instead of living in a place of fear, where I was constantly, I was now living in a place of, and in that place, that poverty, and you see things that the deformity, the poverty, the living conditions. But that's not all you see. As overwhelmingly negative, it is also overwhelmingly gorgeous.
Beautiful, I can imagine.
Okay, so I'm not putting these colors in these shots. Okay, the lighting director out there is putting the colors
Actually,
in the shots.
a young lady, Chelsea, asked me that earlier. She said, is he enhancing these colors? Or?
Okay, well, the answer is no. And so, once you begin to open up to the experience, then the poverty absolutely has a place. Your heart is still broken by some of the things that you see. There are certain scenes that are etched in my... There is a scene I could describe to you in nauseating detail from the very first time in Calcutta of a woman lying in the street in the process of dying. Her 2-year-old kid is sitting on the street crying, and her 3-week-old newborn is sucking at a breast that hasn't had milk this decade.
A hard thing to see.
I'll remember that
Yeah.
forever.
But you didn't photograph it.
No, that one I didn't. But my point is that that's part of it, but that's not all there is. The hook for me in India was, I had, at that time in my life, worked in Harlem, South Bronx, spent a great deal of time living and working in very, very poor ghetto areas. I knew what the violence was. I knew what the vibe felt like. Here I am, going through far poorer, with more money around my neck in this toy that I'm carrying.
Sure, than they make in a year. Yeah.
And I'm hearing laughter. I'm seeing joy. I'm seeing and feeling a sense of contentment that didn't make sense to me.
How did all that influence you as a photographer?
Well, I wanted to know.
Right.
I wanted to know what that was about.
Right.
Okay, because it didn't make sense. Right. Just parenthetically,
Sure.
when I was in Vietnam, the hook for me in Nam was forgiveness.
which is this amazing shot over here, over your shoulder, which is quite stunning.
Because that didn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
And I went looking for the anger, so within what became to be my spiritual belief experience, all that other stuff fit in, so that when I'm there now, it's this and more all at the same time. So when I'm taking the photograph, it's this and more at the same time. I'm not taking a photograph of an incredibly poor kid right now. This guy didn't have 2 nickels. This guy
can only imagine.
had minus 14% body fat.
Right.
No teeth. I have another shot of him where it's a totally different vibe because he doesn't have any teeth.
Right.
And the purity of his experience at that moment is why I go to India.
Right. And I love that you did not try to alter that in any way and that you left it exactly as he lives. Somebody was asking me what's reflected in his eyes.
Me.
Oh, that's you up there?
Yeah.
Well,
That's me.
somebody asked that question earlier. I think it was Chelsea. They said, what's reflected? I'm going to show you the photograph that absolutely started it for me with, and it's this one right here. It's that one right there. This is the one I think that's in your house now.
Yep.
This is the photograph that Tony saw. He said, "Woo, you got to go see this guy." And unbelievably, how old do you think that girl's hands are? Or do you know?
Teenager. I don't know.
She's 10 years old. This little girl is 10 years old. When I was told that, I couldn't get over it because that looked like my grandmother's hands.
Right.
And I just thought, I cannot believe that this is a 10-year-old child who has lived a life that produces hands like that. That blew me away. That's the photograph that got me like this and hooked me to Bob's work. Because he saw that. He could have photographed anything about this girl, her face, her eyes, or whatever. He photographed her hands. And I think those hands say more than the whole portrait could have said about her.
Exactly.
I love that one. Loved it. The other one I love is this little boy right here. And this has to be my favorite photograph of Bob's. I don't know why. There's something compelling about this little boy that just, every time I look at that, it's like he's trying to tell me something. It's like he's trying to speak some words to me. And I think that's true of a lot of these photographs of yours, Bob. The people are trying to tell you something when you look into their eyes. This one has it, I think, in spades. It was hanging downstairs and we asked for it to come upstairs, so I wanted it right here in the room with us. I love this little one here. What's your favorite one?
Mine?
Yeah.
Probably the ghost in the alley one.
The
That's
ghost in
over
the alley there,
there.
the whole way down there. Yeah, it's
One
fantastic.
taken in India.
What can you tell us about the ghost? I don't know if you guys can have seen it, but it's down in there. You'll see it. There's a ghost-like figure in there. Can you tell us anything about that particular one?
Sure. There's a lot of things about, that's one of my favorite shots. There's a lot of things about that shot that I really like. One of the things is that if you were to, that's an alleyway that is off the main bazaar in this city, Varanasi, which is the holiest city of India. That's about 3:30 in the morning. If you were there during the day, you'd want to get out of there as quickly as possible.
Right.
It smells. There's all kinds of junk and garbage all over the place. There would be nothing there that you would want
That would
to
interest
take
you.
with you at all.
So why were you there?
3:30 in the morning, I come out of my hotel. My hotel was on that street. And I come out and I just see it. And what I'm seeing is very different than what I saw that afternoon. And I stopped because I saw something very different. 3:30 days of film, that's a 4-minute time exposure.
Oh, you just left the camera open, the lens open?
I'm tripod, I'm there, hanging out, taking the shot. A man comes into the alleyway. He's got a bicycle next to him. He turns the corner, he comes into the alleyway, he stops, he sees me. Many people in India speak English. What should I do? I know that there's very little time left. I say, please, if you don't mind, just wait very soon, very quickly. He's in the shot for about 20 seconds. Because there was so little light, I call the shot Ghost in the Alley, because you can see his outline.
Sure, yeah, I've seen it.
In the shot. So that's a guy with a bicycle.
Right. I just love it. And look at it later on. The other one that fascinates is this one here. And this one, when I first saw that, I kind of like, it was a little bit scary. It looked like the horseman of the apocalypse coming at us, you know. It looked kind of biblical in a sense. It looked like it was just huge. Afghanistan?
Yes.
What was going on there?
They are playing the national game of Afghanistan. It's called Bushgazi. And they're playing the same game. There is a goat that is lying transverse across this guy. He's trying to take the goat to his goal line. These guys are going to stop him.
Whoever thought of that game?
And it's Afghanistan, and they don't say please and thank you. They stop you. And when they play this game for real, it takes days. The only way you can see it is if you're on horseback as well. This was more of a staged thing because I actually took this with a 50mm lens, and for those of you that are photographers, you realize I got to be pretty close to the action because that's a slide and it's not enlarged. I was like next to these guys when I'm taking the shot, and if they were playing the game for real, I wouldn't be talking to you.
Right. But they were fully accepting of you being there? I mean, there was no animosity or anything?
No, no. This was 1974. I was in Afghanistan in 74 and 75. At that time, I did not speak any of their language. Later on, I lived in Iran and I learned a little bit of Farsi, but at that time, I did not know it. But what was clear was, if you treated an Afghan with respect, he returned it 100-fold. You had to know what the rules were. I'm not talking about Bushgazi, I'm talking about being
rules
there.
of being in Afghanistan.
And if you played by the rules, you were fine. If you didn't play by the rules, you could get dead. But in Afghanistan, if I showed them respect, it was returned 100-fold.
Fantastic.
I loved Afghanistan. Through a weird set of circumstances, I was actually hired to be a psychologist in Kabul in 1974. At that time, there was a very large USA base, so there were 1,800 families living in Kabul, and they needed a shrink. And one just happened to be.
Voila, here's a shrink.
And I was interviewed by embassy staff, I was interviewed by the head of personnel. It turned out that I couldn't get the job because it needed to be a stateside hire. But I would have jumped at the opportunity of staying there then. It was.
And who knows where your life would have gone had you done that.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about these two over here. Let's get in here. And this will be the last two we're going to talk about before we get some questions. It's getting hot in here. This little girl right here was another one that I think, much like the boy after the portrait, you know, you can't help but love this, guys. This is just such a sweet, sensitive photograph of obviously a girl who, you know, is not living in the lap of luxury by any means, I can imagine, but such soulfulness in her eyes. I think there's something about your work, Bob, that you seem to capture in the expressions, and that is that soulfulness. You know, it sort of, it draws you into it. You know, it's some photographs make you do this, but your photographs make you do this. I want to get closer to them. Tell me about this little girl here.
If I remember correctly, it's 2003. This was in the city that the Beatles ruined, Rishikesh.
Oh, they were with the Maharaji?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And this was February, and it was starting to snow. So clearly she's not dressed for snow. And I was walking by, and I was walking by rather quickly because I thought there was someplace else I wanted to go, and I just happened to glance down and I see this absolutely gorgeous girl sitting like this.
Which is as they sit over there for
And they
hours
can
on
do
end.
that
Yeah.
for days. I may need 4 of you to help me get up. So she's sitting there, and I look down and I see she's absolutely gorgeous. And I gotta take her picture. And as I turn around to take her shot, she looks up at me with, why me?
Well,
She doesn't have the slightest idea
there's that thing,
what
isn't it? Yeah.
I am seeing
Sure.
at that moment.
Yeah.
Okay? And when you talk about the being drawn in,
Mm-hmm.
thank you.
Oh, well, you are. I mean, aren't you
Okay.
drawn into that? I mean, it's, you just want to step up to it, you know, just.
I have this one.
Oh, you do? Oh, fantastic.
I went through a process over the last couple of years of writing a book.
Mm-hmm.
I did it initially because I have 2 wonderful sons and I wanted to share part of my life with them and let them know why I inflicted some things on them that I did.
Right, right.
And one of the things that I learned in the process of writing the book is that the moment that I click the shutter
Right.
is the same moment that I'm looking for as a therapist.
Mm.
It is the moment when I experience an opening.
Mm.
The person that I'm looking at may not have the slightest idea about the opening.
Mm.
They may or may not even feel the opening.
Mm.
But for whatever reason, I sense that opening. That's the connection.
I have a feeling this young girl got the opening. I can see something about her. I think she got it. Let's talk about this one, because this is another moment. And guys, you've really got to stop and look at this one. And this over here is a blow-up of this section down here.
It's actually a separate shot, but it is the water
the
in
water.
front of her.
Yeah.
It's
Obviously,
her reflection in the water.
a very personal moment for this lady. She's deep in prayer, you know. Does she even know you're there?
Yes, she knew.
Did she mind? Did she object? Was it an intrusion, or was she happy to share that moment with you?
Initially, she minded.
Uh-huh. And how did she
I
tell
was
you
in a
that?
boat.
Right.
I was in a boat. I would say I was about, at that point when she first noticed me, I was about 20 feet away. And she was getting ready to do her thing, and she looked up and she saw this foreigner, and she like
Gave you the look.
gave me like,
Right.
you know, like,
Please don't. Right.
okay. I pranamed and let her know that if this was all taking place non-verbally,
Right.
that I was sorry about the intrusion if she experienced it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
When she saw the pranam,
Mm-hmm.
she pranamed
She was
back
okay.
and smiled.
Nice.
And at that moment, it was like, okay,
Yeah.
you know, I don't
It's a
want to.
lovely, lovely photograph, full of lots of meaning. It's beautifully taken, it's well composed, but on a whole nother level, there's some complexities going on with this lady that I just think are fascinating. You know, somebody I'd like to have a long conversation with. Any questions for Bob? Because it is getting hot in here. We've got to wrap up soon. Any questions for Bob?
Please, I love him.
He loves questions,
Yeah.
and this is the only time you're going to get him where he's not $300 an hour. Yes, my love. Yeah.
I'm wondering where you hold your camera when you are approaching people and you say you want to make that eye contact with an individual. Where do you hold your camera? Because if you're putting it in front of your face, you're...
Yeah, your body language, I
I
guess, is what you're
typically-
talking
Yeah,
about.
but I'm wondering where the, you know, what kind of camera he's using.
Sure.
And if you put the camera up in front of your face, then
Gotcha,
you're not
gotcha.
making that
Good
contact.
question.
Yeah. How I'm holding the camera is a function of the environment that I'm in. There are certain environments in India, where, for example, I lived in Bombay for almost a year, and I would ride what they would call the suburban railroad. I was living in what's called an ashram, and every so often I would need to go into town. I knew that if I had anything in my pockets that was going to be donated to humanity. So whatever I wanted to give away that day, I would put in my pockets. So under those circumstances, my camera was underneath my arm where they'd have to break my arm to get it. Most of the time when I'm walking, I usually hold the camera by the lens, where I have a grip on it, and the lens is long enough so that I can hold it, and I'm walking, and I am just, to say that I'm looking. I'm looking for my moment, I'm looking for something that has interested me.
You're looking for the opening.
Yeah. When I
Gotcha.
see the opening, it goes from this. Now, I'm looking at you. And since you haven't done anything yet, I'm not taking the picture. Okay? And I'll wait. And as long as you keep looking at me like that, I'm not taking the shot. But that's the shot. That's the shot. Okay?
Okay.
That's what happens.
Nick, you've been around the world. I mean, Nick's an incredible photographer in his own right. You've been all around the world photographing. Which one speaks to you in here?
Well, I haven't taken a good look at all of them,
Yeah.
but the Sadhu
The Sadhu over here,
strikes
the one
me.
by Danny. Yeah,
Yeah, and there are technical reasons,
Yeah.
but the one that strikes me, the reason that I like it, is I feel that I could shoulder up. I can actually enter into the environment and be with the
Step
Sadhu.
into it, yeah.
With these other lovely portraits,
Yeah.
I feel I'm meant to experience them at a certain distance, and that's my level of engagement.
Yeah.
With the
He's pulling you
Sadhu,
in.
I could shoulder right up to the Sadhu, get into the moment
Get
with
into
him,
it.
and so I
How
feel
wonderful
connected to that.
you're able to take a photograph that he wants to step into. I mean,
It is, because
that's a
that-
pretty cool thing. Man.
That symbolizes my spiritual connection with India.
Yeah.
That guy.
I love it. What else for Bob? Yes.
When you were in India, did you see any wildlife? And if you did, were you ever interested in taking pictures of it? Or like the change of the environment and everything like that?
I have been lucky enough to see some of the wildlife.
Any here?
No. I've been on a number of game preserves. Almost had a very interesting moment with a herd of elephants one time. That was,
In India?
yeah, I would not have been able to talk to you about that. I don't have the right equipment to do it well. You really need a much longer lens than I carry around with me. I'm walking around in 100-degree heat, and it's hard enough with what I have.
Yeah.
So I don't really have the opportunity to do it well. In terms of documenting the changes, the closest I did to that was in 2007, I was in India with my younger son Noah, and we were on a boat on the Ganges in Varanasi, and we had just spent a while watching them film, I guess, a music video. I'm telling you, it's a holiday. India's a holodeck, and we just got finished watching them filming this music video in the holiest city of India. We're on this boat, being rowed by a girl that I knew before she was born. This family, and her father used to be my boatman, and now she was rowing us down the river. And the next thing we know, there's a TV crew interviewing me for Indian TV. And they wanted to know why we were there, and I used that as an opportunity to do a little infomercial about getting their act together to clean up the Ganges.
Clean up the game.
And
Terry, come here.
so,
This is Terry Jordan. This is the lady who, yeah, please get around. This is the lady who ultimately says what goes in this gallery and what doesn't go in this gallery. So thank you for putting Bob's work
Oh,
up.
we love
yes,
that.
thank you.
And
Tell
we
us-
love Bob.
Briefly, without putting you on the spot, what was it when we first sent you the images? What was it about his work that made you go, yeah, yeah? Because you see photography all the time.
Yeah, I think it's that, you know, I love color, so I love the vividness to his images, and they're very rich. But I think it's the personal connection that you can make into them, whether it's the person or whether it's the hands or you know the pieces. So it's
Which is your favourite one?
Of course, my favorite is Simple Pleasures down. at the
Seems
end.
like this little hallway down here has to be a quench with everybody. Has to go in a minute.
Yeah.
Look, we're going to wrap it up. Is there any more questions before we do? Because I don't want to. Yes, go ahead.
I don't know how to frame this without being rhetorical.
That's
but
okay. Be rhetorical.
I think every photographer who does location photography is aware of giving up the real experience of being in that place
Sure, of course.
for the responsibility of
Catching the moments, yeah.
having the photography. And
Yeah.
this is where it's rhetorical, I guess. I mean, you seem continually willing to give up the real experience for taking on that responsibility as a photographer artist.
I've been to India 11 times. 2 times I went without a camera.
Very different.
I did it specifically for that reason. Though, I must admit that even when I'm without a camera, I am like,
Still taking pictures.
I would have done that. Sure. But you're absolutely right.
You never
It is
stop
a
it.
very different experience when I'm looking for a shot versus when I'm just being. Though, part of my process is in trying to make that connection even when I'm taking the shot. That's part of what makes it fun. Doesn't do it justice. So I'm making that connection and I'm fooling around and I'm joking around and I'm there even though, if you don't mind, in Cambodia, I love getting on a motorcycle and just going off to where no gringo has gone before. I don't ever feel like I'm in any danger, and I don't know where I'm going to wind up. And I wound up in a village in the middle of nowhere. And I walk into this village, gray-haired old gringo who just got off a motorcycle, walking in, and I am already the TV show for that day. When we first arrived in Vietnam, the first night we were there, we're in this large park in Hanoi, and we watched them play. I don't know the real name of the game. I called it foot mitten. They were playing badminton, only no rackets. And they were playing with a bird that was a regular bird on steroids, so it was like, grew up next to a nuclear power plant. It was like this, but with a net. And they were kicking it over the net. No rackets. But nobody kicked it this way. That's for wimps. They let the thing go over their head, and they do something there. And the next thing you see is this thing going. And my son and I are like, what? Are you kidding? What? So of course, okay? Pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. So now you slow forward a month. I'm in Cambodia. I'm walking into this village, and there are these young kids playing the game. So I put down my stuff. Can I play? Now all the old people, everybody in the village are there. It's like, this is going to be good. I can't even do it with my feet, so I'm doing it this way. Okay? And they're laughing hysterically because how pathetic is it? This old man is like, okay, we're having a blast. After that, the village was mine.
Yeah.
I wasn't doing it for that reason, but I went anywhere I wanted, and everyone was like laughing, and we were having fun. And
But that's the difference. You weren't photographing the badminton game, you were participating in the badminton game.
that's absolutely true. No, you're absolutely right. There's a very big difference. So I try
It's a
to
trade-off.
balance. It is absolutely a trade-off. Yeah.
Good question.
Yeah, thanks.
Anything else for Bob? Yes, sir.
Thanks.
Yes, go ahead.
This is your first exhibit.
Yes.
Extraordinary.
Thank you.
It moves me. Every photograph in here makes me want to come into it.
And he's a photographer. I just met him.
I am.
I didn't pay him to say that.
Well, listen, you know, I'm from Clarksville, Tennessee, which is where we are now, and I search around Clarksville. Now, I travel a little bit, you know, but mostly in the United States, and I seek out things that are of interest to me, and, you know, there's nothing exotic or, I mean, it's American, it's America, mostly my photography. And I just wonder, like, if you're planning on, what are you planning for? Do you look around where you live in your region, or are you planning to go? I'm sure you're planning to go back to India.
Sure, it's a good.
Many times, Afghanistan, Vietnam, Cambodia. You want to go back to those places and photograph those cultures and spend time And I really appreciate the fact that you go in, you're not going there to get a photograph or make art. Like you're going there to get into the culture and get the experience. I mean because that's that's what the after hearing you speak and like seeing the images, that's what I feel. You're not just there to get the good photograph. You get the photograph because it means something to you at that moment, and that's what it's all about, in capturing a moment.
Sure.
And I just wonder what you're gonna keep doing this, right? Good.
As long as the knees hold out, yes.
Yes.
No, I'm very lucky in that respect, in that when I go to someplace, first of all, I know what day I'm going to land and I know what day I'm going to leave. And I might know where I'm going to stay the first night. But after that, it's whatever happens. But I'm very lucky, as hard as I am on myself and as much work as I need to do on myself in a lot of different ways, one of the things I don't do is put any pressure on me to come back with any number of shots. I go with no expectation. It's like I don't have a minimum daily requirement of, I'm there, and if I come back with something I really like, great, and if I don't, I'm there.
Yes. Yes.
But let me ask you about why not here? Why there? Why are you not seeing some of those faces in Brentwood? Or in,
Turn off the camera. It's a function of my own personal limitations. It's a function of what I'm particularly attracted to. I'm interested in something that I can believe. So there's not a lot in Brentwood that I can believe in terms of that speaks to me in a way that's in harmony with what the connection is that I'm trying to live. But I absolutely can find those kinds of connections in America. It's just when I get a chance to disappear, I mean, I still got a bucket list that there's a bunch of places that I want to go to.
But there's a freeing thing about being there. You can be anything you want to be there, when you're in that environment.
It's not. It's yes, that's absolutely true.
Right.
It's when I grew up in New York, religious and spiritual experience, for the most part, was something that I saw people doing once a week, once every 6 months, the special holidays.
Right.
When I go to third world countries, many of them, their spiritual experience is saturated in the environment.
I get that.
It's not something, they don't need to go to a synagogue or a church.
They just
in order.
are.
It is, and that's what I'm attracted to. So if I had an opportunity to hang out on an Indian reservation and they were living that, get out of my way, I'm there.
You'd have the same experience.
Absolutely. So that's what I'm attracted to.
Yeah. And that is the spirit of Asia, the illusion of person and place. We're going to wrap it up there because it's been here way too long. Give it up for his first show and for Bob Sherman. I love this